I appreciate you having me on this morning and getting an opportunity to introduce myself to your listening audience.
Well, we appreciate you making time for us. I'm sure it's a busy time as you hit the campaign trail. And Regan, for those in our listening audience that have never heard of Regan Deering, tell us about yourself. What's your background, and why are you deciding to get into politics? Talk to us about those things.
Well, I am a Decatur native, and I have decided to run for this open seat in Congress because, quite frankly, voters across central Illinois and across this country are looking for common sense leaders who are going to stand up for our individual freedoms and protecting our American way of life. I am a mom, a former teacher, and small business owner, and I didn't go looking for a political career, but it seems as though this environment is just begging for problem solvers with real world experience in our communities that are going to stand for we the people. So I have been married to my husband Brian for coming up on 19 years. We're raising 3 kids here in the Decatur, and I know that I'm on the front lines primarily of the assault on our public school education for our children. I personally joined the lawsuit against Governor Pritzker over the mask mandate, and found myself surrounded by fellow moms and dads that were, standing up against what was executive orders that just didn't seem appropriate for our least vulnerable kids and masking them all days in schools. So, we need to get back to representation and elected officials that are working for us and representing our desires and our hopes of kind of just getting out of the way and letting us live our lives. I was a small business owner in Decatur. I owned a tutoring company, and so I know what it's like to feel the pinch of government overreach and regulations and taxes. I had the responsibility of balancing my business budget. I know what it's like to sign the front of the check and the back of the check and create jobs in my community. Small businesses are the backbone of our economy, and so I want to be able to fight for them as well. And then the last, families in Macon County. I have helped an organization called Northeast Community Fund that serves primarily as a food pantry, but also offers emergency funding for things like prescription assistance or utility relief. And find myself engaging with families that are in a broken welfare system that are looking more for a hand up than a hand out. And so I just want to find success for all. I've sat at a variety of tables and boardrooms and projects that are getting good people together. We're working on public-private partnerships, and I think that those strengths and those passions will help me deliver for the people in Washington.
Regan, why focus at the congressional level? And it sounds like you have a great passion for what's happening in the state, especially as it relates to the impacts on kids and businesses and communities and those sorts of things. Why go after a congressional level position instead of maybe focusing on the state level? How about that?
Well, the Illinois 13, although it's a federal congressional position, I do need to advocate for those in this district. And so for me, I want to be someone that makes progress and not just noise at the federal level. We're being told what to do at every turn. And I want to be able to sit amongst leaders that are looking for good policy, looking for good funding back to their district. We do have an open seat, and so I know that we just need people at the federal level to stand up and say no to a lot of bad policy that's coming out, and knowing the work that I've done for my own family. And, if I feel like I can fight and take on Pritzker, I'm coming for Nancy Pelosi next. I mean, we've got to have people that are committed. It's a huge sacrifice to go, to Washington, D.C., but we need committed people and passionate people who are going to defend our country.
Yeah, you mentioned this is the 13th district, and that is an open seat in Congress at this time, a newly formed 13th congressional district in Illinois. And as we again talk with Regan Deering, she is a Republican candidate in the 13th congressional district in the upcoming June primary from Decatur. And Regan, let's dive into some of those policy things. You mentioned you want to get out to Washington and advocate for smart policy and those sorts of things. What's your number one priority? What are you hearing the most as you make your way around the district and get in front of people, make your name known? What are you hearing? What's top of mind for you if you were to win this congressional seat?
Well, as I mentioned, I want to work for the people's concerns, and right now that is out of control inflation. Kitchen table issues like being able to put gas in your tank and food on your table are top of mind for every American. I think that it's never been more necessary that we try and rein in the reckless spending. I mean, we had millions of dollars pumped into our economy during the COVID relief funds, and we have just, tried to buoy up our economies, and now we're facing the effects of that with the supply and demand issue. We've got supply chain issues. We have people that are not going back to work, and the government is just continuing to play monopoly with money and just keep printing money, and it's not working for us. I think that it's terrifying to people that we have, sort of out of control prices at this point. So for starters, as a fiscal conservative, I need to take my experience back to Washington to be able to kind of rein in this reckless spending. The devil's in the details when we talk about prioritizing our dollars, and people are upset by, for example, a bill sending $40 billion to Ukraine in our third package. When we have homeless veterans sleeping on our streets, we have families that are not able to afford, groceries for their families, or, for example, filling up their gas tank to get to their two jobs. And they're having to make hard choices, and it doesn't feel like the government is working for us. So I probably would say that's a number one priority for the Republican Party right now.
Well, and on top of all of that, you just mentioned you've got moms that can't feed their kids because there's a baby formula shortage across the country as well.
Insanity to me. I mean, being a mother myself, I can't imagine the desperation. I have seen it in my own community. I mentioned working for the nonprofit, and we have a supply of formula, and we have depleted it down. We feel thankful that we could offer what we had, and we are continuing to ask our donors, should they see, available types of formula that are kind of really sparse right now, to be able to pick up a can or two and bring it to us, and we will get it into the hands of the right people. But that's just a failure of this administration to plan ahead. I mean, I've read the articles about the shutdown of the plant, and we knew that was coming, and we just aren't preparing, and we aren't prioritizing, and Americans have had enough of that kind of leadership.
Well, when it comes to, you're talking about supply chain issues, gas prices, food prices, certainly my family has felt the brunt of those things the last several months, and it's not really easing at all. In fact, it feels like it's getting worse about every trip you make to the grocery store or the gas pump. Is it as simple as it's Ukraine's fault on these things, as the administration would have you believe?
Absolutely not. That is a pathetic excuse for a reason that why we're facing the issues that we are here in our country. I mean, of course, we want to be able to diplomatically have resolve between Russia and Ukraine, but Biden coming out and saying this is Putin's price hike is just so irresponsible, and he doesn't want to take the blame for his policies that from day one really started an attack on our American energy independence, whether that's looking at shutting down the Keystone pipeline or canceling leases for drilling. I mean, he's pushing for renewable energy and, has an assault on the oil and gas industry. So I think a lot more people would have respect for him if he would just admit the choices that he is making and start to course correct, because we're on a path that is just not sustainable, and Americans are really hurting.
Well, politicians of both sides have a hard time doing what you're asking for there, Regan. But I digress. Nonetheless, what can you, from a policy standpoint, what can we do to ease these things? What can we do to ease gas prices? What can we do to ease the burden at the when we check out at the grocery line? What can we do about these things from a policy standpoint?
Well, it's not going to be an easy fix or a quick fix by any means, but I do think that in November, if we can return, majority rule to the House and quite possibly the Senate with Republican leadership, it's talking about ways that we can reverse course. We do need to start, like I said, looking at options for restarting those leases. We need to open some of the pipelines. We've got to have some stopgap. I mean, we can look at gas tax relief. We can look at actual dollars going towards incentives for businesses and trying to get our economy moving again. I think that's what we have to do, is work back towards the root problem. With the oil and gas production, I was down in the southern half of my district. We have a refinery down there, and they said, look, we had to slow production way down, and people went offline. So it's going to take time to work back towards that. I don't know that we're going to see immediate relief, but if we can start having legislators talking about, a multi-pronged approach to try and reverse course and get some more money back in our pockets to be able to just survive. I mean, we're looking at farmers who can't handle their input prices of gas, diesel gas, let alone fertilizer that's up, 7 times. We have to be able to look at providing some immediate relief, and that's going to take a lot of cool heads coming together and looking for some good solutions.
Sure. Well, Regan, again, you're running in the 13th Congressional District, the newly formed district that encompasses portions of Central Illinois. Again, Regan Deering, the Republican candidate in the upcoming primary. Regan, just remind us where the extent of the district, where it's at in Central Illinois. How about that real fast?
Sure. So to the east, we have Champaign-Urbana, and working through a small portion of Piatt County through Monticello. I'm into the urban Decatur area over to Springfield. And then it sort of takes a 90-degree turn down through Macoupin County into Madison County, and then all the way down to the Metro East across the river from St. Louis. So it's 7 counties. It's an entirety. It's about 524 miles. So we are meeting people all across the district and just finding that people are ready for change. I mean, I have said, if we want to change Washington, we got to change the kind of people we're sending there. I'm a common sense conservative that is just looking to get an opportunity for the American way of life and success for all. We need to have, people that have walked the walk, are engaged in their communities, know what it's like to have those small business struggles or their farmer struggles or low income family struggles. So I have done the work in my community, and I intend to take that same drive to Washington to work for those in Illinois 13th.
Sure. Well, I'll tell you what, Regan, stay on the line with us. We'll take a break here. We'll come back and we'll talk some more other issues like, let's say, gun control, birth, abortion, abortion decision at the Supreme Court level. We'll talk some other things as well. And as I mentioned, our guest is Regan Deering, 13th Congressional District Republican primary candidate in the upcoming Illinois primary. And she's our guest on the phone. We'll talk more with her coming up on the WHOW Morning Show.
Let's check the opening numbers now at the Chicago Board of Trade on this Monday. I'm Jim Taylor for the RFD Radio Network. Corn higher, beans lower, wheat starting the day higher. July corn, $7.78 up a nickel. September corn up 5.5, $7.38 December new crop, $7.27 up 7. July beans starting the day $17.26 down 19.5. August beans down 15.75, $16.46 November new crop $15.49.5 down 18.75. July wheat $10.80 up 9.5. September wheat up 10.25, $10.95. December wheat $11.08.5 up 10.5. July bean meal $422.80, that's down $6.30. And July bean oil, $79.55, down $1.26. That's a look at the opening numbers, the Chicago Board of Trade, for this Monday morning. Jim Taylor, RFD Radio Network.
Having a hard time finding the correct new car, truck, SUV, or crossover to fit your needs? This is Scott Baum from Bob Chevrolet Buick here in Clinton. Some lots look low on inventory, so go to our website, look at our pre-order and reserve tab. You'll see inventory in transit, which are built and on their way to Clinton, and in production, new Chevys and Buicks, which are being built and will arrive soon. Or you can always call our sales team. They can help you find the correct one just for you. BombChevyBuick.com, right from the start.
Here's a supply chain update from your Clinton Save-A-Lot. Owner Dave Jackson here to let you know that despite our best efforts, many times we're seeing specific items simply disappear off of our store shelves. Our suppliers are halting production of slower items to concentrate on the higher volume products. Keeping our shelves appearing full is becoming more difficult, but you have my personal guarantee we are pulling out all of the stops to keep the freshest meat and produce and the items you buy every day stocked and on our shelves. Your Clinton Save-A-Lot appreciates your business, and we hope to see you soon.
This is The Morning Show on 92.3 FM in DeWitt County, WHOW.
Once again, a good morning. Thanks for being with us. I'm your host today, Seth Lawrence. The WHOW Morning Show streams to Facebook and YouTube. It's brought to you by Peterson Insurance, your Pekin Insurance agent in Clinton. And again, my guest on the phone line this morning is Regan, 13th Congressional District Republican candidate in the upcoming primary in Illinois. And Regan, we left off our last segment with still some topics to tackle here this morning. And I want to get your perspective on the abortion debate and where you stand with that, how you feel about the Supreme Court decision, their letter, I guess, being released ahead of their ultimate decision. How about some of these things to start us off in this second segment today?
Sure. Well, I, like many Americans, are frustrated with the leak out of SCOTUS. That's an institution that we value its integrity, and I'm disappointed by that leak, and I hope that they will get to the bottom of how that came to be. I am a pro-life candidate. I am forever grateful to actually have been adopted myself at just a few days old. So I value the choice that my birth mother made in giving me life and an opportunity for my loving family to be parents. And I think that really has shaped my perspective. It's challenging for me to live in the state of Illinois, where we have very extreme pro-choice and abortion policy. I know that the overturning of Roe v. Wade and the Dobbs decision is not going to make abortion illegal. It will just return the matter to the states, which constitutionally is where I think it belongs. So where I stand as a mother and a woman myself is that I want to be able to support women who are facing an unplanned or an unwanted pregnancy, and be able to let them know that there are resources and support networks. I'm actually, at the federal level, would like to see the Hyde Amendment reinstated, which does not allow for federal taxpayer dollars to go towards abortion clinics. I think that that's not something that we should put on, a portion of the population that is against abortion. And so I think that in my district, in the state of Illinois, I'm listening to what the people want. And I know that for me, my pro-life stance will be reflected in my votes on the congressional floor. Mm-hmm. I do think that we will see that it is going to go back to a state's issue where it belongs, however.
Mm-hmm. How do you feel about the often, chartered narrative, I guess, that the pro-abortion side tends to put out there, that oftentimes it's old white men that are, old white conservative men, making the choices of bodily autonomy for women? How do you feel about that as a pro-life conservative woman?
Well, that sounds like a good talking point. I mean, I guess technically, the congressional makeup of males and females and their age may play a factor in that kind of statement. But, there are plenty of women on the pro-life movement as well. It really disheartens me to see those screaming at each other. I think most Americans fall in the middle in knowing that we want to value life. I don't know how many people are pro-abortion. I mean, that to a certain extent is murder. And so I think that we need to find some more common ground in talking about supporting women that are facing these choices, but also valuing life. I mean, I read an interesting article where they were, moving away from the Democratic language that used to be, rare, safe, and legal. And now we have people screaming at the tops of their lungs that, it's their choice and there's just no regard for the unborn children. And the article was saying that, the medical procedure of abortion is extremely safe and there's less than 1% chance of death. Well, I look at it as there's a 100% chance of death for that unborn child. So I do think that we need more conversations around the table. I think that we need people to come together and talk about, like I said, supporting women and families that are in crisis.
Regan, anything else on the abortion debate that we haven't covered that comes to mind for you?
Well, I think as a candidate, I can share that I did receive the endorsement of the Illinois Federation of Right to Life. So that means a lot to me, and they're valuing my position as a candidate in the 13th Congressional District.
And again, that's Regan Deering with in the 13th Congressional District, a Republican in the upcoming primary from the Decatur area. Regan, let's wrap up our conversation talking about the gun control debate. This is another one that seems to be at the forefront of public discussion right now. Where do you stand on amending the Second Amendment and some of the proposals that are coming forth out of the latest tragedy in Texas? How about some of those things?
Yeah, I mean, turning on the news every day is just so heartbreaking to see the gun violence in our communities, whether, it's national news like out of Uvalde or, our small communities that are having victims of gun violence just one at a time. I'm here in Champaign County this morning. We had a young man shot in the head in his car because he didn't move fast enough through a stop sign situation. And so I do hear the cry out of Americans that we are just so frightened and we are so tired of the senseless gun violence. I applaud the bipartisan talks that are happening at the federal level right now. I am obviously not privy to those discussions, and I think that it's one thing to run a campaign and get elected and know what we stand for, and it's another thing to legislate. So I will watch closely and see what comes out of those kinds of talks. I'm a strong supporter of the Second Amendment and that constitutional right, and I think that we do need to protect our ability to defend ourselves and our family and our property with that Second Amendment. Excuse me, and put a greater focus on stopping criminals and those with evil minds that are carrying out these senseless acts of violence. So I will wait to participate in that conversation as well as a legislator, but I do know that it's a topic that needs to be talked about regularly. But we do need legislation that's going to be based on outcomes. I think that we often get passion driving these conversations, and we need to be focusing on, mental health, school resources, keeping victims at the forefront and keeping our criminals in jail. I mean, we are facing a crisis in this country of elevating victims. We're letting them out on bond. We're not keeping them in jail where they believe. We have, here in Champaign County as well, lost Officer Oberheim just over a year ago. And our police are on the front lines. We've got to do everything we can to make sure that they can do their job and go home to their families at night. And that means keeping, criminals who enact gun violence in jail and off the streets so that they cannot repeat these actions.
Regan, got to let you go. Thank you so much for joining us again. That is Regan Deering, 13th Congressional candidate in the upcoming Illinois primary in the Republican ticket. Network News is now.
The Big 1520 WHOW Clinton, 92.3 FM, W222 BG Clinton, 106.5 FM, W293 DJ Normal Bloomington.
Last-minute change in the program for the House Committee investigating the U.S. Capitol riot. We get details from correspondent Bob Agnew.
Rich just